Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Living System podcast. I'm David Waldas, here today with Rechelle now.
Yes.
And got it right. Great.
Yes, you did.
And so Rechelle and I met several months ago, where she actually had me on her podcast called Unabashed You as a guest. And we really hit it off, had a great conversation. I love what you're up to with the podcast and kind of how it's become this phase of life for you. One of the ways that you're giving back with all the gifts that you have and all the life that you've lived. And after that, we kept talking, and then Rechelle came and did the group program with us. And so we thought we'd talk about that and how it integrates with what she's doing now. One of the fun things about Aligned Living is that it's kind of a gateway to a deeper access to ourselves and our own clarity, and whatever it is that we're doing in life, we can apply it to it. And so welcome, Rechelle.
Thanks, David. It's such a it's a pleasure to be here. It really is. I was very tickled when you asked me to come on. It's fun. It's fun to continue to connect in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun how we met too. So do you want to talk a little bit about Unabashed You and what that is and where it came from?
Yeah, remind me who recommended the podcast to you. That's the piece that I don't remember as well, I think, as you do.
Right. So I had somebody who was getting me on podcasts.
Okay.
And they came across your podcast and thought it was a great match, and it obviously was. And so a very connective third party, which was great. And
that's so fun. I love that, because as you know, we don't always know, the stuff that we want to share. We don't always know where it's going, to who it's going to, and often if it's even landing or making.
Or just talking out into the ether.
Yes, we just talk and hope that it's landing somewhere where it might need to go. Unabashed You, I started when I turned 60. I thought, oh my gosh, this is not quite the home stretch, but the third act anyway, if you divide your life into approximate thirds. And I thought, oh my gosh, what else do I want to do? What's left? And I thought, I'd had a career teaching, working in nonprofit. And I thought, I just really want to do something creative, something that will just be a challenge and fun, quote unquote, and will be inspirational, I hope. And the idea was, showing up in your own life. I think I've come to the conclusion that too many people let fear kind of hold them back, so that they just they're just not quite shining as brightly as they could. And it's not a pride thing. It's not an ego thing. It's just, who were you made to be?
So much conditioning, right?
Yeah. Like, show up fully as that. I need you to do that. You need to do that. And I feel like too much of life is spent not really, shining brightly. So it's very kind of vague in general, but the idea is, to focus on belief, believing in yourself. If you have a faith system, believing in that. And then, what's your passion? What's that thing that lights you up, that gives you spark? And then to turn that into some kind of purpose, because again, we need you to do the thing that only you can do.
Not just the idea of showing up and doing it, right?
Yes. And then silver linings or gratitude, finding the good that happens after hard things. Because so often, we wouldn't sign up for the hard things for sure. And they're hard and they're painful. And then after that, can you find the good, even though it wasn't good to go through that? Can you find the good after that? And I just guest after guest has just come on and blown me away with all the good that they have found.
Right. And I always feel like too, there's always a silver lining, and if we aren't finding it, we haven't gone far enough through. We're still in it, right? It's interesting. I do a mastermind too, and the last call, one of the women was the theme was basically breaking through what we call that fear veneer, where we have it, and we have to get on the other side of it to get the reward, to get the freedom, to get that self-expression. And,
Right.
you know, this woman was talking about one of the things that she did have a breakthrough on and how it's a big part of her life now. And it was something that she was really afraid to do initially, and now she does.
Well, yeah, it's that do it scared concept. I
Yeah,
mean, athletes, actors, I mean, and so many, I mean, they do it anyway.
right. Yeah, yeah,
They
they're
don't
not
let that,
not scared.
yeah, they don't exactly. And I think that's so important for us to remember that if they feel nervous or excited or all of that, then that's a pretty normal response and that's okay. And to do it, to be brave enough to sort of do it anyway.
Yeah, the people that are some of the people that are the best at what they do are often either in the locker room or in the green room throwing up beforehand.
I,
Then they go out and then they do it. But
I
you
was
know,
thinking that same thing, but I thought, should I say that they throw it beforehand? And yes, sometimes they do.
right, right. And it's funny too. So the when we were talking, there was something else she was right on the verge of breaking through with. And I said, what if you didn't do that other thing? How much of the freedom in your life, how much of that self-expression, how much of how you know yourself comes from having had that breakthrough and now getting to do that in your life?
I was,
If you don't take that step now, it's the same thing. And it's so hard for us to imagine the freedom that's on the other side of those
mhm.
breakthroughs. But when we go and do it, and I'm sure you're experiencing that, yourself with stepping out there and doing your podcast and exposing yourself over and over again and being that free.
Right.
That
And I would imagine that you feel the same in that there's not a regret. I mean, it may not go just quite the way you thought it would or wanted it to or whatever, but it unfolds all these other things that you couldn't foresee. And so it's very reinforcing. I'm so glad I took the risk. I
yes,
don't have regret. And what there's so many good sayings. You regret the things you didn't do, or you miss 100 of the shots you don't take.
right.
All those sorts of things are so true.
Yeah, and it's funny too how I would get really anxious and nervous before being on a show or a call or even a lot of group stuff. It was really anxiety inducing for me. And,
Uh-huh.
Aligned Living helped me with that a ton, but I still kind of had that residual when I thought about starting my podcast or being on other people's shows. And, I just started doing it, of course, as we do. And it fell off quickly. And I was like, oh, that's not really a thing for me anymore. I was just remembering it from how it used to be. And it was a great feeling, but it was funny. I was on a show the other day and I looked at the questions I got beforehand, and I was like, these don't feel like they match up at all with anything I normally talk about. Like I don't know how it matches up with Aligned Living. And then I was like, well, it'll still be fun. I'll just go on and see where it goes. I'm like, there's only a couple thousand people listening. And I thought like I had that thought, and I'm like, there's only a couple thousand people listening. I'm like, that's pretty funny. Before I was like, shit, there's two people listening. I better this is scary. Then the thought was like, when did that happen? Where it's like, oh, there's only a couple thousand people listening. We'll figure it out.
Well, and you're an expert in you. So showing up as you and having the conversation. And to me, this is a conversation. When you came on my show, it's a conversation. So there aren't really wrong answers. It's just
Ah, no,
what are we talking about? Let's talk about it.
absolutely. I mean, a lot of the questions were like, how would you encourage people that that are when they're looking at data to drive their answers? What data would you suggest they look at?
My gosh.
And I realized the whole podcast was on data-driven decision making, and we
Yeah.
had a great time. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing on this show. I don't even know how I got on this show, but here
My
we go.
goodness.
So it was hilarious, um, I mean, it was a great time.
Well, good. That's good for you for saying yes. I mean, why not?
Why not, right? Only a couple thousand people. So
That's
funny.
plenty.
It's plenty. It was just such a funny thought to me that ran through my head. I'm like, when did that become a comfortable number to experiment in front of? We'll see what happens.
Well, that's so funny.
So yeah, so we I had it came on your show, we connected, talked about life and the way that you live it and the idea of just wanting to be more and more authentic and bring yourself out there and live your life from that place. And so that brought us to a pretty natural step into you joining the group program.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Yes,
So
when you were talking on the show, and you were on a series called Let's Talk About Mental Health, which I thought is such an important topic. And you were talking about some of the ways that, you didn't reveal too much. So it was good because it's like, oh, I think I want a little more, you know?
nice.
And just have it just sort of hit me the right place at the right time. And I think for me, that's kind of how God works. He's just like
Absolutely.
sent a message, and I was like, okay, I'm listening. All right.
I got to set up a little strainer. Wait, what's going on? There's something here for
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And so you stepped into the container and joined us.
I
And
did. I did.
you know what you were getting into, and
I don't think you ever do. I mean, even if you sign up for any kind of a class, you can have a title and you can have a little paragraph summary or whatever, but you really don't know till you're in it. And again, it's one of those risks that was worth taking. It's
sure,
like
sure.
why would I not? I mean, it spoke to me when we were having that conversation. I wanted to know more. Why wouldn't I continue to pursue that curiosity and find out about them more? And I'm
Yeah,
really glad I did. I'm really
that's
glad I
that's
did.
great. And it is kind of a funny thing because like when I share with people about what aligned living is, they go, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting. I think that could help me. I think I get it." And then after week one, they go, "Now I get it." And then
Yeah.
after week 2, they go, "Now I get it." And then week 3, and then week 4, and then week 5, they're like, "Now I get what it is." And so
Yes.
it's one of those things that it's a moving target because it affects us in so many different ways. And, but ultimately it's about coming home to who we are, being that and expressing that, which is what you're all about.
Yes, exactly. And another point, in addition to the fear, I feel like we kind of hold on to, or we're afraid to like fully grow or bloom or blossom, or all the different ways you can look at it. In addition to that, I think we don't necessarily know ourselves well enough. I
Mhm.
don't
Yeah.
think we have taken the time to really get to know who we are. And there's so many cool, interesting assessments out there, and most of them are free, some of them aren't. And I think it's so important to explore who you are, because that information helps you to show up in your own life better informed. Oh, that's why I'm that way, or I naturally present that way, or that's my go-to, or whatever. I think there becomes permission and freedom in that. Like, well, that's not a bad thing. It's
Mhm.
kind of how I'm built, and
Yeah.
now I have that information. And so, once I see that I'm heading down that road, I can like, okay, I get that's my go-to, but I don't have to stay there. And I think when you
Right.
know yourself better, you're much more apt to see the other possibilities.
Absolutely. And, I think it's such an interesting point because when we do a lot of self exploration, so often what we're exploring is our coping mechanisms. And we don't know it because
Mm,
you go, oh, I know myself. I know I'm sensitive to this. I know. And, a lot of what we do is go, okay, let's move past that. Let's go
right.
even deeper into what wants to express out of us. Like I was talking about that fear veneer, when we go past, we go inside of ourselves and we hit that place where fear shows up or shame shows up or resistance shows up and it feels solid and we push past it and find that true expression of us. It's so valuable. And
Well, and I wrote down fear veneer because I was like, that's brilliant. That's just
Mhm.
brilliant. I just was like, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, and it's what we do. And it feels solid. It feels like there's not freedom on the other side of it, but probably more stuff we don't want to see. And it's just
Hmm.
a thin layer. And once we get used to that, we go, fear veneer is showing up. Let me just push through it and get to the goods. Because that's
Yes.
it's a firewall to what's really us.
Yes. And do we want to like get to the end and wish, the woulda, coulda, shouldas? I mean, it's like, no, no, I want to fully embrace who I am and bring that to the table of other people wanting to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it was so fun having you in the group and watching you experience. And it's funny. One of the things I realized recently is when I see everybody's faces in the group, people that look comfortable are the ones that are giving themselves outs. They're going, all right, and they go, well, I'll do this, but I won't do that. I believe in this. I don't believe in that. I'll explore this. I want to explore that. And they keep themselves in comfortable places. And so when I'm leading a group and I look at people's faces and they're like, there's some real like, oh my God, what am I, that I know those are the people that are going for it. And it's often like, it's counterintuitive because you think you look at the people that look like my God, are like the people that are just like, oh, this is too much. I'm not doing it. But they're the ones that are going for it, just like the people thrown up in the green room before they come on stage, right? And so it's so counterintuitive when we look out at an audience and think that, oh my God, this person's having a horrible time. No, they're going for it. They're the
Wow.
ones that are really lifting every stone. They're the ones that are really looking deeply at themselves. The ones that are sitting there smiling at you are the ones that are just like, not going there. I'm giving myself every out right now. And I often saw your face and I was like, is she hating this or is this awesome for her? And, as I made that realization, I'm like, she's going for it. That's what that expression is.
Yes. Yes. I mean, while we talked and connected and then, did different meditations and exercises, I found myself, writing key things down so I wouldn't forget it. And a lot of insight into like stuff that, and you talked about how it was going to like sort of start in childhood, some of the things that we carry with us, even though you think, well, I've been through therapy, I've worked that
I've
out.
worked with that
Yeah, I'm good. And then you realize, oh, it's still there, it's still presenting itself
at
in
a higher
these different
level,
ways.
which, it's great too, because as we work through those things, we just create a little more freedom, a little more freedom, and a little more freedom. But until we've really brought it to that next level of resolve, that freedom, we only feel it showing up when we push ourselves to another level. And so when people go, oh, yeah, no, I resolved that, it's fine. As long as I don't expand anymore, I'm good. Right. And it's
Interesting.
I'm
Yes.
not done expanding. And so I'm going to keep hitting and finding more to resolve because there's more of me that's going to be exposed to myself. And that's beautiful. And there's greater freedom. And so many people, they go, yeah, like, I don't know, you don't fix what's not broken. You're like, but the reason that you think it's not needing your attention is because you're keeping yourself inside the pale, inside the certain level of expansion that feels comfortable. And the moment you go beyond that, which is where all your freedom is and where all your self expression, all your fulfillment is, it gets really, it resurfaces and go, thought I dealt with that. And we go, yeah, another layer. Awesome. Cause I know what's going to be on the other side of that veneer.
That is such an excellent point, David, that wanting to expand and then, keep going and realizing you don't have to settle. It's going back to that settling.
Yeah.
And I know we see people settle and you're like, no, there's so much more for you. Why don't you
Right.
want more?
I know I've worked with plenty of clients that are like, so we're taking the elevator up one floor at a time. They're like, ding. And they're like, oh, this is my floor. I get off here. I am not going to the next floor. I'm not going to look at that. And, and when they go, let's work at something else. I'm like, well, what we do is expand. And so we can't look at something else because that's what's on the next level. And so like, it'll be fine. Let's just go there. And some of them can, and some of them go, this is my floor. I'm getting off. I'm expanded enough. This is as much freedom as I want in my life. This is as much access to me as I want that I'm comfortable with. And, a lot of them come back in 6 months and go, all right, so I want more of me. I'm ready. Or do they just go, all right, let's do it. We've already gone through enough layers. This one's not going to be any different. I know it's a veneer and I'm ready to pop it.
Well, and that's great that you are meeting people where they're at and their readiness. I appreciate that about you. That takes it's a very respectful place to be because, they've got to want to.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And looking at how you entered into that container for the group, like you wanted to, like you were just going for it. Like I just keep thinking about the look on your face of like, oh God, okay, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. Yeah. And so, is there anything in particular that you wanted to share about kind of what
Sure.
went through
Absolutely.
for you? And
Yes.
you've
I
been
think
at personal development for a long time, and so I always think it's so interesting, when we're at it and at it and at it, and all of a sudden we start having these new epiphanies and breakthroughs and
yes.
understanding. So yeah.
Yes. And I'm interested in the epiphanies and the breakthroughs because I want to keep expanding. I want to be the most I can be while I'm here. And I think that's part of why we're here is to do that. I think, for me, the early on in the weeks, I really just like hit me over the head that my big sort of message or theme or whatever was, do you get me?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that
Right.
is it. And I remember when you said it, and I would just like, it
Right.
just was so clear that, and in my own private life, I would say, I just want people to understand me. It's the same thing. but
Yeah.
not everybody's going to. And, having that realization, I mean, I kind of knew that, but I realized looking because you reach this point and you kind of look back and you sort of review and you try things on and you realize, oh my gosh, some of my most profound hurts
Mhm.
have stemmed from the do you get me?
Mhm, mhm.
And feeling
And
like
I
somebody
need to go out in
didn't.
the world and resolve that too. I'm always looking for somebody to help me resolve that.
Yes, yes. And that tracing that back to a father wound, everybody's got some kind of wound.
Sure, sure.
It's not a blame thing for me at all. It's a
Nobody
not
get out of
being.
their childhood unscathed. No.
Yeah, exactly. And, recognizing the incapability of people, I think is huge. And that's one of the things that, we talk about sometimes on the show and that, you brought up. And I was like, absolutely. When you recognize that someone isn't capable, you can't hold them responsible. You can't really hold them responsible anyway, but there's this recognition that a toddler can't tie their shoe.
Right.
That's not going to happen no matter how hard you try to get them to do it. You can show them, teach them, model it, all of that, but it's just not going to be there. And learning to be okay with that, learning to be okay with the fact that not everyone is going to get me. And your point was not everyone is supposed to get you. I don't know. How would you explain that? Not everyone is supposed to get you.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it too is that when we're on a personal development path and we're seeking something inside of ourselves, as obviously we are, and people that are listening to the show, it would make sense that they would be. I don't know why they'd be listening if they weren't. That we're such a strong minority, and so our way of being is always about self discovery, about going deeper inside of ourselves, about trying to uncover what's in our way. Most of the population doesn't do that. They're not interested in that. And so if we expect that from them and we're trying to push them, all we're doing is pushing them away. We're pushing into something that doesn't make sense to them, that they're not interested in. And for people to understand us, when that is our whole drive to uncover ourselves, to flip every rock and to figure out who we are and express that, it's not relatable. And so when we want the unrelatable to be relatable, we're just setting ourselves up all the time rather than being something that we can appreciate about ourselves and go, I love that I'm a seeker. I love that I'm always looking for the next level of me because it's so fulfilling for me. It's not easy, but it's so fulfilling. And I couldn't imagine my life being different. And, letting other people have their life, giving them that grace, but they're not doing something wrong. It's that big one room schoolhouse where we're have different curriculum. And if we think we're all in the same grade, it's I say you don't go down to kindergarten room and go, what's up with these kids? Like that one can't even read. That one over there just wet his pants. Like what's wrong with y'all? It's like we go, oh, that's kindergarten, but we don't judge, and we're so used to being hierarchy, right? Kindergarten, first, second, all
Right.
doctoral, but it's not hierarchy. It's just what's your curriculum? What are you working through? Why are you here? And when we let people have that and we have ours, and don't try to force our curriculum on them or let them force their curriculum on us, there's a freedom in that. And then when we realize, like, oh, I want to be self-expressed, I want to actually, do things that make other people cringe. I want to start my own podcast and in my retirement and put myself out there and
Mhm.
say things that other people wouldn't dare say to their close friends, but I'm going to say it to the public.
Yeah.
And like that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, that when their whole job to them is to hide themselves. And so that freedom that comes from unhooking from that, like if we're trying to get other people to give us permission or to acknowledge what we're doing, like we're just constantly frustrated, constantly, feeling this feeling of not supported. And it's not what our job is just move forward and be us. And yeah.
And you said something, and I wrote it down during one of our weeks. The more I know me, the less I need other people to know me. And I was like,
Beautiful.
just
Yeah.
drop that mic right now. That's just so good.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And really like what that speaks to is the idea of coming into resolve with ourselves. I like me. I am this way. I want to express myself this way. And I'm not looking for any kind of permission. I'm not looking for anybody to say, "Oh, I see you." Like I'm already seen. And it also comes back to, the work that we do with reclaiming the abandoned self, the part of us that we broke off that,
Uh-huh.
because it didn't fit into our family or didn't fit into our school or didn't fit into whatever. And then we go out into the world and ask the world to help us heal it. when all we have to actually do is reclaim it. And once we
Mm,
reclaim it, then we're not going to ask the world for it anymore because we already have it. And so once
right.
we know ourselves really deeply, we don't ask the world to go, that's who I am, right? Like you see it, we go, it's self-evident. Like it doesn't, there's no discussion here. It's a known truth as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. And again, I think we need to get more out of that mindset of being so concerned with what other people think and being people pleasers and doubting ourselves and comparing ourselves. And again, it goes back, like you said, that fear veneer. It just kind of goes back to, oh, I'm just going to be like right in here. I'll just be right in here. And it's like, no, please don't.
Yeah, don't touch the electric fence, right? Just we back
Yeah.
off. That's great. That's great. So, anything else come to mind that you want to share from that journey? I mean, I remember that being such a big
Oh,
because it was a foundational operating system, and when we operate with that foundational piece, it's always steering our relationships. It's always steering our conversations. It's always steering our emotional state. And when we remove it, it's like, oh, freedom again, right? Like I don't need
absolutely.
this from you, and now I can appreciate other things.
Yeah, and there was something else you said that I wrote down. And as I was looking back at it earlier today, I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, it's just so incredible. Being loved where you are is different than being understood where you are,
Mm,
which is a very interesting. I mean, being loved where you were explaining, is easier. Being understood where you are is harder. And I
yeah.
was like, that was another, like, I got to just really, I feel dizzy from that one. Let me just ponder that a bit.
And it speaks to us too about how do we love others, and do we love them how we want them to be, or that conditional love where we people withdraw and then like, oh, you're pleasing me now, I'm going to pour tons of love on you, and then like, oh, you're starting to go in a way I don't like, I'm going to pull back a little bit, I'll be accepting but I won't be loving, and like that game that is constantly played of conditional love versus loving people for where they're at. Wow, I don't understand it, but you're obviously doing what you need to do, but I'm not going to withdraw my love because I prefer you show up this way, and I'll love you.
Right. And that gets tricky because when I think of what you just said and I'm thinking boundaries, how important they are. So, how would you make the distinction between sort of withdrawing because I don't like how you're being versus I have to place this here to keep me safe and to keep you safe?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with how are we interpreting this as a threat. And so somebody that, we want them to join in the conversation, we want them to come along with us, or but they're going a different direction. Like they're doing what they need to do for them or what they feel they need to do for them. And that's different than them crossing a boundary for us.
Mhm.
And so often, sure, absolutely. If somebody's crossing a boundary and speaking to us in a way that we're not okay with, or not honoring us, or like if they're pushing in on our freedom, that's very different than them exercising their own freedom. But
Very good.
when you go, I like you a lot better when you're putting your energy into this instead of that. So if you're gonna go play golf, that's fine. Have fun. If you're gonna hang out here and visit, oh my gosh, it's so now you get this part of me, right?
Okay, so it's very withholding on the one hand.
Withholding, yeah, that's a
Yes,
perfect example.
okay. Right. That's a good important distinction, I think.
Yeah, and it has so many layers to it. It can show up in so many different ways. But I think that's a really basic, easy way for people to understand is I like you when you act more the way I like you. And so I'm not going to withhold love then. But if you're acting ways more that are not as much the way I like you, I withhold. And that's what our parents did. That's when we look at our greatest gifts we have to bring. That's how they all got, lopped off us. That's how we fractured our whole self as we go, you know what? I'm actually appreciated a lot more when I'm quiet. I'm appreciated a lot more when I don't fully express myself. And so great. This is the sweet spot for receiving love. I smile a lot. I play along, lots of love. I get too quiet, too withdrawn. The love starts to go away. I get too expressed and too loud. The love starts to go away. Let me find the sweet spot and dial in where the love is. And that's what I'll be. And then we look at our lives and go, yeah, no wonder we don't want to express ourselves.
Well, and that's tricky too, because when you're raising kids or you're a teacher and you've got a classroom, that there is naturally some structure that needs to be there
Absolutely.
and some expectations that need to take place and be conveyed. However, it can go too far. And now some of what you were describing just a minute ago feels very manipulative
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
versus
unconscious
healthy.
most of the time, right? And some of the settings don't match us too. Like we have these settings that have been the same way for years and years. Do they match really what it doesn't match all. Obviously, I was a teacher for 12 years. Schools don't match all kids, right? And so we're learning more and more about neurodivergence and but we were all just kind of pushed into the same factory before, and now it's starting to become, more diversified. But I think that can be a problem too, because when we're always, you know, teaching people to well, back off this, and then they don't know how to work through the hardness. They don't know how to work through the requirements of life, and then they go out into the world, and the world doesn't care. And so, you know, I that was a big thing for me when I taught in alternative school, where there was lots of adjustment to make kids' gifts show up, and then we took out into the world that wasn't going to adjust for them. And so
Yes.
it's a very challenging right action there.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, really
Great conversation. Great
Yeah, I know, it's so fun.
conversation.
I felt we could just keep going and going. Well, we can always have you back on too.
I'd be anytime, David. It'd be my pleasure.
Awesome, awesome, Rechelle. Well, it's great to visit. And
Thanks.
Unabashed You is the podcast. We'll put the links in here,
Yes.
and you get some great conversations on some really interesting guests. And it's all about being unabashed, right? Express
Yes,
yourself.
absolutely. Be who you are. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
a
David.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Awesome, awesome. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.